Our next guest is an ER physician who was at the Trump rally on Saturday. Dr. James Sweetland rushed to help injured victims, including Corey Comparatore, who's a firefighter, and he sadly is the man who was killed at that event. Dr. Sweetland, Jim, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you, and you're welcome. And can I take a minute just to shout out a thanks to my Canadian family and friends who've sent me condolences, especially Dee Cunning, Lee, and Les. Thank you for your thoughts and your prayers, and I'm doing fine. Thank you for giving me that minute, Natasha.
You got it, sir, considering what you've gone through, and I'm very sorry for what you witnessed, what you experienced, what you had to deal with. So for those who may not have heard your story over the weekend, just tell our Canadian audience, where were you when the shooting took place?
If you look at the stage where Donald Trump was at the podium, I was in the bandstand on the left side. And I was just 2 rows from the top, and I was basically under the Jumbotron as he was speaking.
And the shooting happens, and walk me through the chain of events that take place.
We were up there. Donald Trump actually had turned to the Jumbotron that was behind us, and I was standing there with a friend. Our 2 wives were in the seats down below, both of them within 25 yards of Donald Trump. He actually had turned to point out to a graphic on the Jumbotron behind us, and he faced us. My friend jokingly said, "Look, he's looking at us. Take a picture." Of course, he's motioning to the Jumbotron. He then turned away, and I heard 3 pops, like firecrackers going off. And then I realized it was a shot. There was 3 pops, then just a 2 or 3 second pause, followed by 4 more. I, like the crowd, turned to look to my right. There's a field behind that grandstand, and across the way was a set of trees. And I thought that the shots were coming from those trees. When I turned back to look at the stage, Donald Trump was already smothered by a pyramid of Secret Service agents. There were 6 agents that fell on him. At that time, I then heard a woman shouting out, "He's been shot, he's down." And that was to my right, kind of catty-corner, diagonally down on the same bleacher. At that point, everybody was huddling in place. I'm an emergency department doctor. I've said this before, but I went into muscle memory, which is what we do when something's like that. And all I could hear was a voice in my head saying, "Go, go, they need you. Go do something, help that person." And so I clambered over the bodies. I hope there was not a video showing me that I fell as I was trying to get to Corey. I did not know his name. When I got there, it was obvious he had been shot just above his right ear. It was a grave injury. There was a lot of blood where he was laying, and although I got to him pretty quickly, there's already somebody there putting pressure on the wound. He was without pulse or respiration. And when I arrived on the scene after having fallen, I said, "I'm a doctor." And of course, everybody kind of looked at me like, "Yeah, sure." A clumsy one, okay? But I then said, "I'm an emergency department doctor. We need to get him up on the bench." He was wedged between the 4th and 5th row of benches, and he was laying in a pool of his own blood, and there was, unfortunately, brain matter there as well. 2 individuals who had never seen that and who were in shock themselves got up and helped me get Corey back up on a bench so that I could administer CPR. And I did that for about 2 minutes, not a long time. And the CPR was I gave rescue breaths as well as chest compressions. He was, I was then tapped by a Pennsylvania State police trooper, and I turned around to see 2 of the biggest cops I think I've ever seen. And they grabbed Corey lifted him like a rag doll and took him down over the bleacher seats as quickly as I've ever seen in my professional career.
Jim, let me jump in for 1 second, if I may, because I'm just trying to understand the chaos in that moment. You've gone into, superhero mode where you're going to try and save this life, despite all the evidence indicating that it might be a futile attempt. But we've heard that Corey was a firefighter, and again, in life and death, he's a hero because we've been reporting that he was shielding his wife and his daughter, I believe. Were they around? Did you have any communication with them?
I only said one brief thing to them after resuscitation and the state police were taking Corey. I looked up and I saw a woman and a daughter there that I assumed was his family. And the look on their faces, I'll never forget. They were horrified, they were appalled, and yet they had a look like, is there some hope, or what's going on? And all I could do was turn to them and blurt out, he's getting the help that he needs. And that was the only conversation. They were in shock. EMS came and whisked them off with Corey. And again, I did not know his name at that time, but he was a hero.
What does an experience like this do to you?
I was in shock. As I was leaving the fairgrounds, a CBS reporter said, "You're covered with blood. What happened?" And there's a film of me and my wife. She's wearing a cowboy hat. I'm covered with blood. And I just did that interview, and you could tell that I'm quite agitated. I'm speaking quickly, and I was just in shock at that time. And I need to say one thing. There was a gentleman, I've said this before, that was off the camera. It was to my left, who after that brief interview came to me and said, "Brother, there's blood on your face." And he was an Army veteran, and he handed me his bottle of water so I could wash the blood off my face and my shirt. And then after I did that, he leaned into me and said, "Brother, are you okay?" And I looked at him and I recognized that he'd probably seen some combat and that he'd experienced this himself. And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay, brother. You've seen this too?" And he said, "Yes." And we hugged each other. And my point in talking about that guy is that's America at its best, with Americans helping other Americans. Pardon me. He was helping me just as much as I was helping Corey. And Corey's a hero, and so is this Army vet. And to me, that's the grace and strength that America has.
I hope that feeling of brotherhood and camaraderie and caring for each other becomes the dominant theme as we all move forward from this surreal thing we've witnessed.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's grace that needs to return, and when I say grace, I mean strength to see each other and talk to each other in a civil, respectful manner, and to stop demonizing one candidate or the other. Because Lord knows there are people with mental issues that will say things like, "This guy's a Hitler, I'm going to take him out." And that's not the way it should be. We should be able to talk about our differences openly, agree that we don't agree, and try to communicate in a respectful and graceful manner.
We will leave it on that good note. Dr. James Sweetland, Jim, thank you so much for everything you did on Saturday, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me on.